ultimate life form. I should be the key to all manner of medicines, curing you.
You and Grandfather are doing your best. I'm just as happy to spend time with you here while you both research.
Just wait here. I'll be back. I promise.
The first episode of the Sonic X Shadow Generations Prologue just released. And with that being the case, I wanted to talk a little bit about it, specifically the possible implications that this has regarding Shadow and his backstory. Now, given that this is supposed to be Shadow's perspective on Sonic Generations' story, I think it's safe to assume that the Shadow that we see here is actually modern Shadow reliving past events in his life. Interestingly though, it's to a different degree than how Sonic met his past self and such in Sonic Generations, where Sonic and Tails and Classic Sonic and the others were simply sent back to certain areas from different points in time, and they had to restore those areas to normal. Shadow seems to be getting sent back to the exact moment in time that he has to deal with, and is completely reliving the events play by play. Now, I have played with the idea that this might in fact be Shadow from the past who's getting glimpses into the future, but at the current moment, there's not really enough info or context for us to really easily come to that conclusion, so for now I just kind of see it as a possibility that's on the table. But since we're now on the topic of this possibly being Shadow from the past, then if this were somehow really the case, I think that that would explain the new mystery character that everyone's all the buzz about right now. Speaking of, so yeah, apparently Shadow is listed on the Sonic X Shadow Generations website from Japan as one of 2 playable characters for Shadow Generations, with Shadow having his own little character slot and the other character saying coming soon, implying that this may be a spoiler for the game. Of course, Sonic and Classic Sonic still have their own slots, but nobody really cares about Classic Sonic, let's be real. Anyways, back to this prologue clip. There's also something interesting to consider about the story, now that we know to some degree that Shadow will be experiencing his past in a more vivid manner than how Sonic and Classic Sonic experienced theirs. And I think the most interesting aspect of this is the Time Eater. Given its behavior in the original Sonic Generations, I think that the Time Eater couldn't have done this without outside influence. I think that Black Doom may be in some way responsible for the Time Eater's strange behavior in this half of Sonic Generations' story. Now, I know that in the original Sonic Generations it's implied that Eggman gained control of the Time Eater and that he was basically solely responsible for erasing the life and color from the various points of time that we visit. But I think that that was never actually the case, and that we're simply getting the perspective that Sonic X Shadow Generations story provides. I think that it's entirely possible that Black Doom in some way had control over the Time Eater before Eggman did, and that he somehow sucked Shadow into all of this just before Sonic and crew got sucked in by the Time Eater. Now, the reason I think this is pretty simple. Shadow specifically is not present when the whole crew surprises Sonic at his birthday party. And the Time Eater is known to kind of already exist somewhere just in the middle of space. So I think that it's entirely possible that Shadow may have already started to confront Black Doom and the events of this game before Eggman ever interacts with the Time Eater. Meaning that at some point, Shadow may have separated the Time Eater from Black Doom's control and left it floating out in space where Eggman initially finds it. Now, this could explain why Shadow is simply a rival boss in the original generations and doesn't appear to be trapped. It also explains his reaction if we were to consider the idea that Shadow in the prologue is in fact the same Shadow just a few days before the events of both games. Now, all that explained, I want to turn my attention back to the new playable character and discuss exactly who it could possibly be. Initially, because of the prologue, I thought that it was more than likely that the new playable character would be Emerald. But now, after covering how this may have affected the Shadow we see in Sonic Generations, I'm not so sure. The reason being is that Silver is also randomly just in Sonic Generations as a rival boss. However, what's even more interesting is the fact that he basically says the exact same thing as Shadow when he sees Sonic, which is, of course, "Are you a fake?" Now, of course, I could just be grasping at straws here, as it's clear that the original writers of Generations never intended those lines to be anything more than throwaway lines. But the way in which they're connected and the fact that Shadow seems to be experiencing some form of hallucinations makes me think that Silver went through something similar during the events of Sonic Generations, and that's why him and Shadow are both skeptical when they come across Sonic. What I'm basically implying is that Silver is the new playable character, or that he could be. But all that aside, I'd like to hear what you guys think about all this. Do you think that Shadow is being manipulated by Black Doom, or do you think that this is the Shadow from the past? Who's the mystery character? Leave a comment with your thoughts below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. Peace, guys!